This week, we are going to start reading the Torah, the Bible, from the beginning, and we're going to begin with Genesis. And I'd like to share a few points with you, a few reflections that I've had recently about Genesis. If you notice, of course, Genesis begins with the creation of the universe, but Genesis really, and we see this from the very beginning, is a story about separation and identification. Think about it for a moment. The world begins its complete and total chaos. And then God creates light. But what does the Bible tell us? God separates light from dark. So we have two different concepts coming out, emerging from this chaos. Then we have God creating the heaven and the earth. He separates the waters that are above the sky from the waters that are below the sky. God separates the seas from the dry land, and so on and so forth. We work through the process of creation through 6 days. And then what happens at the end of creation? God designates the seventh day as something separate. He blesses the seventh day. He sanctifies it, and this, of course, becomes the Shabbat. In this way, the seventh day, the Shabbat, is separated from the rest of the week. Now, in fact, in Jewish tradition, we have a service at the end of the Shabbat called Havdalah. And in the prayer of that Havdalah, we talk about God who separates holy from every day, who separates Shabbat from a regular day, who separates the nation of Israel from the rest of the nations. And indeed, this idea of separation on the one hand and selection on the other hand will be a theme that we will be following throughout the book of Genesis. We begin with the separation and identification and selection to a certain degree in Genesis. For example, with creation, God does select man to have his own job because he is going to rule all over the rest of God's creations. But then we go forward. Later on, we're going to see God selecting Noah to be the father of humanity, second time around. Then God selects Abraham and appoints him to be the father of the nation of Israel. And we're going to follow this theme to a certain extent throughout the book of Genesis. Now, a man by the name of Breisheet, an 11th century biblical commentator, asks a very interesting question at the beginning of Genesis. He says, why does the Bible start with the creation? Why is it important? If the point of the Bible is to teach us about the nation of Israel and the role that the nation of Israel has in God's plan, why do we need to start with creation? And he answers that question, and he basically says, because we need to understand that God is the creator of the universe, and therefore he can select, and he can choose, and he can designate as he will. He can designate Israel as his chosen nation. He can designate the land of Israel as the land of that chosen people, and he can put them together because he's created the universe. I see in this process here something even more profound. God selects everything throughout creation. The whole purpose of creation is to create from chaos order, destiny, purpose. And so God does that in creation, but he also does that with the nation of Israel. The people of Israel have been selected to bring a unique message to the world, and we can see that process beginning all the way back at the beginning of time. Take that message with you. I will see you next week. This is Sandra Oster-Barris, bringing you a few minutes of the Torah portion from the heart of biblical Israel. Good evening.